Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another video of mine. As you can see, I again have a whole new look. Honestly, I prefer this one. The last one was real good, but a bit too good. The realism didn't allow for much expressiveness, but now I can emote much more. Anyways, today's video is a commission sponsored by One Gourmet God, so if you have anyone to thank for this video's existence, including my patrons, it's him. As for what this video will be about, I will go through the entire One Piece series, pick out the best, most consistent, calcable feats I can find, and determine how good they are. As you can tell by that description, as well as how long the video is, we will be here for quite a while. So grab your popcorn, your drink, and blanket, sit back and enjoy my objective, new, excellent, pedantic, incredible, eager, complex, earnest, super comprehensive, authentic, long, iconic, nerdy, grand video. Or as most people will call it, my One Piece scaling video. Let's get calking. First feat on the chopping block is the following. Before bullets from multiple rifles reach Zoro and Kobe, Luffy intercepts them via Gomu Gomu no Rocketto. Chapter number 5. First, I need to get the distance Luffy traveled. This is pretty simple. I'll just angsize the 6th panel on this scan and use the horizontal length of Zoro's cross to get how far Luffy is. I'll use this scan's first panel and Luffy's height to get the length. Using Luffy's height of 1.72 meters, I get the beam length of a bit less than 2 meters. With that acquired, it's angsizing time. With this beam length and panel height in pixels, we just throw that into the angsize formula and we get this value for the degrees. Throwing those values in the angsize calculator gives us a distance of 12.971 meters, which makes sense as the main building of the marine base is several stories high, with Helmeppo's room likely being at the top floor. Now the time frame. This is really easy. Using the length of the beam I got earlier, I can just get the distance between the rifle barrel and Zoro/Kobe. This gives a distance of around 3 meters. Oda confirms in this SBS that the pistols of One Piece are flintlocks. As such, I'll apply the velocity of a flintlock rifle for the speed of the bullets. Although, wink wink nudge nudge, we all know that One Piece guns are far stronger than 1800s guns, but whatever. The long rifle seems like a safe bet for what the Marines are using, so I'll be using that one. Its average muzzle velocity is listed at 1,400 feet per second, or 426.72 meters a second. This gives a time frame of around 0.007 seconds. Now all that's left is to acquire Luffy's velocity. Dividing the distance by the time frame gives a speed of over 1,800 meters a second, or Mach 5.39. Boom! Hypersonic Chapter 5 Luffy. Also, there is something I should note about this feat. Earlier, in Chapter 4, he used Rocket to try and reach the top of the marine building. He definitely traveled faster here as his arm stretched way more than it did in Helmeppo's room. As such, the rebound should be much stronger. Luffy even says that he overshot it. But, despite going faster than Mach 5, Luffy was still able to react and grab onto something, namely the rope holding Morgan statue up. This basically means that he can react to such speeds. Not bad for a beginning of series feat. Next calc. Hypnotized Buchi creates a large crater with just a stomp and the destruction stretches out to a nearby cliff. Chapter number 35. First, I need to get Buchi's cape size. Thanks to the Weaver cards, we know Buchi is 2.16 meters tall. With this scan, I'll get how long his cape is. With simple algebra, we get his cape to be around 1.51 meters long. I'll use the last panel of this scan to get the size of the crater via the cape size, assuming the crater is circular, of course. With that, we get the diameter of the crater to be around 29 meters. Next up is the depth, which is a bit trickier. I'll be using Zoro's arm to determine the depth. I'll use this scan and Zoro's height to determine the length of his arm. Using Zoro's height of 1.78 meters, I get his arm to be around 0.45 meters long. And with the arm length, we get a depth of around 0.6 meters. Now to get the volume of the crater. Volume of a cylinder is pi r squared times height, which gives us this large number, but before I apply the JCC value to that, I gotta consider the cliff. I'll be using the average height of a man, 1.76 meters, and apply it to a rando black cat pirate. That way I'll get the approximate size of the cliff's destruction. Using that height, I get the height of the cliff's destruction to be around 21.31 meters. Using the largest piece that broke off, I get the width of the destruction to be around 5.47 meters. We see the hole left by the destruction to be cone-shaped. As such, I'll use the shape of a cone for the volume. Volume of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared times height. This gives us this large number. Now to combine the volumes. Our final volume ends up being over 562 million cubic centimeters. Given the crater and the cliff broke into large pieces, I'll use what I use for my wild boulder calc, fragmentation of rock, 8JCC. The final value ends up being 1.07 ton of TNT, building level. Quite a bit of people scale upwards from this guy, so this is definitely a good number to have. Next calc. With Gomu Gomu no Battle Axe, Luffy destroys Arlong Park. Chapter number 91. First, I gotta get its size. Using this scan and Luffy's height, I'll get the height of the pillar. Result comes out to be around 5.4 meters. With that value, I'll use this scan to get the building size as well as where the pillar would be if it was touching the building. Now, it's important to note that Arlong Park is split into the rectangular base and the pyramid upper part. Using the base's height, I get its length at around 23.58 meters. The height of the base should equal the height of a pillar, and the width of the base should equal the length. This gives us this large number for our base's volume. Next is the pyramid-shaped part. The angle in the panel is a bit awkward and doesn't really allow for a good view of its height, so I'll just use this one instead. Using the pillar's height again gives us a height of around 37.8 meters for the pyramid part of the building. Volume of a pyramid is 1/3 times the base area times its height. This gives us this large value for the volume. Now to combine both volume values. Doing so gives us this total volume value, but as this is a building, we'll assume that it's around 80% hollow. And with that, we get a final volume of 2.002 billion cubic centimeters. As Luffy says here, Arlong Park is mostly made of stone, so I'll use granite for its material. Also, Arlong Park is broken into many large pieces, so fragmentation of granite works just fine. In the end, this gives us a value of 3.83 tons of TNT, low large building level. Not a bad feat at all. Next calc. Zoro moved dozens of meters before 100 bounty hunters could even see him move. Chapter number 107. Using this scan's second last panel, I'll anxize the distance between the area behind Igaram and Zoro. With the panel height and Zoro's height, we can use the anxize calculator to get a distance of 58.632 meters. For the time frame, like the Wild Speed feat in my Berserk video, everyone was looking directly at Zoro, but unlike Wild's feat, no one knew where he was while they were all looking at him with the intent to kill. Not only that, but those looking at Zoro are experienced bounty hunters on the Grand Line. As I said in my Wild calc, the human brain can process an image accurately in just 13 milliseconds. As such, I will use that as a time frame. Dividing the distance by that time frame gives us a speed of over 4,500 meters a second, or Mach 13.15. High hypersonic Whiskey Peak Zoro. Pretty nice for an early Grand Line feat. Next calc. With Desato Spada, Crocodile pulverizes a large amount of rock. Chapter number 200. Using this scan and Cobra's height, I'll get the width of those pink thingies above the door. This gives the gate a width of around 15.65 meters. Croc was around the middle of the courtyard, so using this scan's third panel, I'll scale the length and depth of the crater he made. With the gate's width, we get the length of the crevice at around 156.81 meters. Using the same method, we get the depth of the crevice at around 22.1 meters. Width is a bit awkward, unfortunately. After all, this is the best shot we have of the crater's width. As such, I'll have to use the width of the walkway to determine the crater's width. From what we can see here, the walkway leading to the palace seems to be 3 widths in size, while the one on the side is only worth 1. So I just need to scale 1/3 of the walkway leading to the palace. I'll do so right here using this scan and Luffy's height. And doing just that gives us a width of around 3.27 meters. Using the walkway, we get a width of 1.46 meters. The ideal compressive strength of granite is over 200 megapascals, so we use the 214 JCC value. This gives us a city block level Alabasta crocodile. Note, he gets way stronger in Marineford, but that's a whole other can of worms. Next calc. Enel uses Thor to vaporize a large amount of wood and the rock beneath it. Chapter number 241. Using this scan, I'll determine the size of the destruction via Nami's height. Using Nami's height of 1.69 meters, I get the tree height at 59.15 meters. As for the width of the area affected, I'll simply use the diameter of Thor. Using Nami's height again, I get a diameter of around 33.27 meters. Using the cylinder as a shape, I'll get the volume. Using the cylinder volume formula, I get this large number for the wood volume. Now I just need to account for the rock underneath. Using Nami's height one last time, for this calc at least, I get the height of the rock affected to be around 7.08 meters. Using the same volume formula gives us this number for the rock volume. As explained in this article, lightning carries extreme heat resulting in melting, i.e. vaporization. As such, I need to determine the vaporization values of rock and wood. Lucky for me, both values were already acquired. This document right here gives the vaporization of granite at 27,050 joules per cubic centimeter, or, JCC. As for wood... Honestly, I was stumped for a good few days. I couldn't find anything telling me how much energy it took to vaporize wood. That is, until I came across this 1975 article, Cutting Wood Materials by Laser. As the title says, this article shows wood being vaporized by laser. The value of the lasers is listed at 0.005 watt-hour per cubic inch, which is basically 1098.43 JCC. As such, I'll use this value. Combining both energy values gives us a casual low town level NL. Very nice. Next calc. Luffy moves a certain distance and moves his arm before the lightning hits him. Chapter number 279. First, I need the distance traveled. Using this scan, I can get the final distance between Enel and Luffy. Using Enel's height of 2.66 meters, as well as the degrees I get with the Angsize formula, the calculator gives me a POV distance of 4.2158 meters for Enel. Now to get Luffy's POV distance. Using the calculator again, I get Luffy's POV distance at 14.854 meters. This makes the final distance between Enel and Luffy to be 10.6382 meters. Now the initial distance. Using the Viver Card Season 1 cover, I'll get Enel's wristband size. Yes, his wristband size. Just bear with me. Using Enel's height of 2.66 meters, I get the wristband size at around 0.11 meters. Oh yeah, and another thing, I need to get Luffy's head size, and I'll use this scan for that. Using Luffy's height again, I get Luffy's head to be around 0.24 meters. Now to Angsize both Enel's wristband and Luffy's head. Using the formula again, as well as the Angsize calculator, we get a POV distance of 1.4068 meters for Enel's wristband. Doing the same for Luffy's head, we get a POV distance of 14.929 meters. With these two values, we get an initial distance between Luffy and Enel to be 13.5222 meters. This means the distance Luffy traveled is 2.884 meters, but let's not forget that Luffy also moved his humerus around 30 degrees and his forearm around 90 degrees. This is considering his left arm was pointing straight forward in the previous page as well. Using this scan yet again, I get Luffy's humerus at around 0.23 meters and his forearm at around 0.25 meters. Now it's time to pull out the good old circumference formula. C equals 2 pi r. In this instance, r is the length of the object moving, namely the humerus and the forearm. Taking into account the degrees they moved, I get these distances. Combining all these distances gives me a total distance of around 3.4 meters. As for the time frame, that's pretty simple actually. I'll divide the final distance between Enel and Luffy by the velocity of lightning, as that's where Luffy ended up when he was hit. We know that Enel's lightning is natural, as in Volume 30's SBS, Oda confirmed the Logia-type devil fruits allow someone to turn into something found in nature. As I said in my Berserk video, the average lightning speed is around 150 kilometers a second, so we'll use that. The final result is nearly 48,000 meters a second, or Mach 139.72. Huh. I never thought I'd see the day where Skypiea Luffy is massively hypersonic, but here we are. Next calc. Nami reflects Enel's casual lightning with her Climatact. Chapter number 283. First, I gotta get how much Nami moved. Luckily, we get a perfect depiction of how much her arm moved. It's depicted as moving her forearm around 90 degrees, then her entire arm 45 degrees vertically, and then another 135 degrees around herself. Using this scan, I'll get the size of Nami's arm, and the approximate size of her forearm. Using Nami's height again, I get her arm at around 0.48 meters, and with the same method I get her forearm's length at around 0.23 meters. Now again, the C formula. Doing all the math as I did earlier gives these distances. Now to combine them. The total travel speed comes out to around 1.88 meters. Now it's timeframe time. With this scan's fourth panel, I'll anxize the distance between Enel's arm and Nami. Using this cover again, I'll get Enel's arm width. The width comes out to around 0.14 meters, and with that I can anxize. With the panel height and the arm width, as well as the value of the degrees, the anxize calculator gives a POV distance of 1.486 meters for Enel's arm. Now let's move on to Nami. Doing the same with her, the calculator gives a POV distance of 15.354 meters. This means that the distance between Nami and Enel is 13.868 meters. While the average cloud-to-ground lightning is 150 kilometers a second, that's because inside the cloud it charges up. Enel shot a casual lightning bolt at Nami without charging it up. As such, I'll use the lowball lightning velocity of 60 kilometers a second. This gives us a velocity of over 8,000 meters a second, or Mach 23.68. Hell yes, my girl is fast, even this early in the series. Next calc. Kuzan casually freezes 3 horizon distances worth of ice so that Tanjit can reach his desired destination. Chapter number 319. For context, Tanjit wanted to travel across 3 peaks of Long Ring Long Land. Even the closest of these peaks is beyond the horizon, and as shown in the image, the distance between them is equivalent. This means that Kuzan must have frozen the length needed to cover that distance 3 times over. In my One Piece Planet video, I calc the size of the One Piece planet, but also determined the length of its horizon. As the closest island is beyond the horizon, I'll use the horizon distance as a lowball. Accounting for the 3 times multiplier, we get a distance of over 31 million meters. This is our lowballed length. For width, I'll use Robin's height and the width of this scan as it covers the entire spread. Note that this number will be very lowballed as we don't see the limits of this path's width. Using Robin's height of 1.88 meters, step on me queen, we get the minimum width at around 95.25 meters. As for the depth of the frozen layer, I'll just use 500 meters as a lowball as it's the depth for tropical islands. Although I should note that Kuzan says the frozen layer will hold out for about a week, which means it could be far deeper than 500 meters if it really is going to hold up for so long. Although there is another reason why it wouldn't melt so fast. Kuzan could have made it so cold that it would resist the heat of the ocean's water for that long, but I kinda doubt that because Tanjit is a small guy and Kuzan wouldn't want to endanger his life because, you know, hypothermia. Regardless, it's a lowball either way, so I'll just use 500 meters for the depth. With these values, I can apply the rectangular prism volume. Length times width times depth gives us a volume of over 1.5 trillion cubic meters. Dear lord. Now for the temperature change calculation. Water density is 1000 kilograms per cubic meter. Applying that value to the volume I got earlier, I get a mass of over 1.5 sextillion kilograms. Oh boy, okay. In my search for the temperature of tropical waters, I found 2 notable facts. Waters warmer than 10 degrees Celsius dominate the sea surface, but do not extend much below 500 meters within the ocean. The variation in solar energy absorbed means that the ocean surface can vary in temperature from a warm 30 degrees Celsius in the tropics. As such, I'll use 20 degrees Celsius for the water as a safe bet. This makes the temperature change, or delta T, 20 kelvins. The formula for temperature change is the following. Mass times temperature change times 4,184 joules. So all I need to do is input the numbers into the formula. And that gives us a doubly lowballed and casual low continental Kuzan. Very nice for our chill god tier. Next calc. Before lightning right above her could strike, Kalifa surrounded her entire body with soap to protect herself. Chapter number 408. Using this scan second panel, I'll get the distance between Kalifa and the cloud. Kalifa's height is listed at 1.85 meters, but there is one important factor to her height, her heels. But luckily, as shown in the Viver cards, this height is taking the heels into account. As such, I will do the same. Using Kalifa's height, I get the distance between her and the cloud to be around 3.61 meters. As this is cloud-to-ground lightning, 150 kilometers per second will be used. And that gives us this very tiny time frame. Now, distance traveled. Distance traveled is a bit tricky, but as she was able to cover her entire body, I'll just use her height for the distance traveled. And this gives us a speed of over 76,000 meters a second, or Mach 224.27. A solidly, massively hypersonic feat for our smoking secretary. Next calc. Via Shadow's Asgard, Moria somewhat splits the entirety of Thriller Bark. Chapter number 481. Using this scan, I'll get the size of Thriller Bark via Oars' height. Important to note, however, as shown in the scan's second panel, there's some distance between Thriller Bark's wall and its actual land. As such, I need to only use the land's diameter. With Oars' height, I get the land's diameter at 1,608 meters. There's no definite way of knowing the shape of Thriller Bark, so I'll just assume it's a hemisphere. This would mean that its radius is 804 meters. While it is true that it's stated he split the island, it's impossible he actually did so, as the island didn't split in two. As such, I'll use only around half the radius for the depth of the crevice, namely 402 meters. This would make the shape a semi-ellipsoid. Putting the values in this calculator, I get this large number as a volume. Fragmentation of rock is 8JCC, but Moria split it, the weakest form of destruction. As such, I'll use half of that. This gives a town-level Shadow's Asgard Gecko Moria. Not bad, considering I calced this in the past to be quite a bit less. Next calc. While Kizaru used Yata no Kagami, Rayleigh intercepted him. Chapter number 512. First, Rayleigh jumped to intercept. Using this scan, I'll get the length of Rayleigh's head as well as the arm for a later time. Using Ray's height of 1.88 meters, I get his head size around 0.26 meters. On top of that, I get his arm length to be around 0.69 meters. 69. Now to use this scan to get how much Ray jumped. Via his head size, I get the initial distance between Ray and Yata no Kagami at around 1.73 meters. With the same method, I get his final distance to be around 1.16 meters. This means Ray jumped around 0.58 meters. But, let's not forget, Ray not only jumped but also swung his left arm. The approximate distance Rayleigh's arm moved is 145 degrees, as his arm moved around 25 degrees when reaching for his sword, and slashed a whole 120 degrees. We know for a fact that he had his left arm unarmed, as it was shown holding nothing a page before the feat, and we never saw him draw his sword between that panel and the feat. We also know for a fact that he holds his sword on his right side as shown here, so he would have to reach to his right side to draw it. Using the arm length I gained earlier, I'll use the C formula to get how much his arm moved. Doing all the crazy circumference math again gives me a distance of around 1.76 meters. Combining the distance he jumped and swung his arm gives me a total distance of around 2.33 meters. Now that I have the distance traveled, I'll use this scan to ang-size and get the distance between Kizaru and Rayleigh. These values in the ang-size calculator gives a POV distance of 19.559 meters for Kizaru. Doing the same with Ray gives us a POV distance of 21.267 meters for him. This means that the distance between the two was 1.708 meters. However, what is important to note is that this isn't exactly the distance Kizaru crossed. Think about it like this. A is the distance between Rayleigh and the Yata no Kagami. B is the distance between Rayleigh and Kizaru. C is the distance Kizaru traveled. Using the Pythagorean theorem as shown in the image, I can get the distance Kizaru actually traveled. And this tells us Kizaru moved around 2.43 meters before being intercepted. Dividing that by the speed of light, 299,792,458 meters a second, we get this insanely small time frame. Our final speed for this is 95.89% the speed of light. A damn fine feat. Hail to the Dark King, baby. Next calc. Before Kizaru's Yasakani no Magatama lasers hit Whitebeard, Marco intercepts them. Chapter number 553. I'll use this scan to get the distance between the scaffold's edge and Whitebeard. I'll assume Kizaru covered half that distance given what's shown in the third panel of this scan. Using the average height of a man and applying it to that random marine, the ang-size calculator gives me a POV distance of 35.376 meters for the scaffold's edge. Using Whitebeard's height of 6.66 meters, the calculator gives me a POV distance of 272.05 meters for the Yonko. Subtracting the distances tells us that Whitebeard is 236.674 meters away from Kizaru. As I'm assuming Kizaru covered half that distance, that means Kizaru shot the lasers 118.337 meters away from Whitebeard. That gives us this tiny time frame. Now to get how much Marco moved. We see Marco is alongside the other division commanders in this scan, so I'll use the closest one to Whitebeard in this scan to acquire Marco's travel distance. Using Whitebeard's height, we get a distance of around 53.91 meters. And with the velocity formula, we get ourselves a casually relativistic Marco. And given he tangoed with the god tier admirals, that's not too surprising. Good feat for the Phoenix. Next calc. Although I'm doing this in chronological order, I'll pass over the next feat and save it for last. After all, it's always best to save the climax for the end, no? As such, I'll take a quick detour to the most calc-friendly post-time skip arc, Dressrosa, and do that real quick. Oh yes, this calc. This is the 9th time I calc this feat. I'm sure I'll have a reason to calc it again at a later date, but for now, this will be the 9th rendition of this calc. Just before Doflamingo was hit by Fujitora's meteor, he fragmented it into many pieces. Chapter number 713. First, I gotta determine the velocity and mass of Fuji's meteor. Again, in my One Piece Planet video, I determined that the One Piece planet has a diameter of over 4 billion meters. Earth's is 12,742,000 meters. This means that the One Piece planet is around 323.14 times larger than our Earth. According to NASA's site, the exosphere is located between 700 and 10,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface, so I'll just use a distance of 3,000 kilometers for the exosphere's location. Following the notion that the ratio between our planet's diameter and exosphere distance is the same as the One Piece planet's diameter and exosphere distance, I'll acquire the exosphere distance of the One Piece planet. Try saying that 3 times fast. But yeah, I'm gonna use this method as the One Piece planet is basically our Earth, just on a much larger scale, so it would stand to reason it shares the same atmosphere proportions. This means that the meteor traveled over 969 million meters to reach the ground. For the time frame, I'll use a safe one and assume 20 seconds. There's no way Doffy, Law, and Fuji were standing there waiting 30 seconds for the meteor to fall. Using a 20-second time frame, I get a velocity of around 16.17% the speed of light. With the velocity acquired, I need to get its mass. I'll use this edit of mine to determine its size via Law's height, given that we saw the meteor is spherical. Using Law's height of 1.91 meters, I get the diameter of the meteor at around 14.56 meters. Using this sphere calculator, I get a volume of over 1,600 cubic meters. The density of meteors is around 3,350 kilograms per cubic meter, so using that, I get the mass at over 5.4 million kilograms. But it's important to note that Law cut the meteor in half using Room. Room can cut things without hurting them, meaning without resistance. As such, he didn't lower its velocity when he halved the meteor. And now with both the velocity of the meteor and the mass of it, I apply it to the kinetic energy formula, and I get 760.62 gigatons of TNT. So high island level meteor. And with that established, let's actually get to Doffy. Using this scan, I'll get the size of his head. With Doffy's height of 3.05 meters, I get his head to be around 0.38 meters in length. Back to this scan, I'll use the third panel to get the distance between Doffy and the meteor. Using these values and the Yang size calculator, I get a distance of 11.539 meters. In the scan, however, the POV is around the halfway point of the meteor, so I estimate that the distance between Doffy and the meteor is 11.539 meters minus the meteor's radius. This gives a distance between Doffy and the meteor to be around 4.26 meters. What's pretty interesting to note is that we see the distance between Doffy and the meteor post-fragmentation. This means that the amount of time it took for the meteor to move from its initial distance from Doffy to its final distance is the time frame. Luckily, the wonderful Lena Shields pixel scaled this for me, so credits for this pixel scaling goes to them. And with that scaling, the final distance between Doffy and the meteor is 1.412 meters. This means that the meteor moved around 2.85 meters. Applying the velocity I got earlier gives us this minuscule time frame right here. We see a square pattern in the strings when Doffy cut the meteor. Therefore, Doffy used both arms to slash the meteor and moved his arms up and down to slash twice. That means he moved his arms 3 times so as to not clash the 2 arms against each other and then back down. His slashes are usually 120 degrees, so I'll use that for his 2 slashes, and then 90 degrees for him bringing his arm down once. We know he doesn't slash with both hands when he turns his arms sharp, as shown here when he's attacking Law the same way he attacked the meteor. He's clearly doing so one hand at a time, one forward and one pulled back. Once again, using Lena's pixel scaling, I get the length of Doffy's arm at 1.762 meters. And now it's circumference formula time. Here's all the math for you fellow nerds out there. As for those who just don't care, the result is around 10.09 meters. And now it's time to finally get this velocity. Our final velocity comes out to 57.34% the speed of light. He is truly a speed demon. But let's not forget that there's still one more thing to calc regarding this feat, the actual destruction of the meteor. This is actually pretty simple. I'll just use the same method I used in my Bleach video. Destructive capacity equals the meteor's kinetic energy plus the destruction value of the meteor. I acquired the kinetic energy earlier, so I just need to get the destruction value of the meteor. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything that states the sheer strength of chondrite, so I'll simply use the fragmentation value of granite. Applying the JCC value gives us 3.09 tons of TNT, but that's only if the meteor wasn't moving as fast as it was. If we do take into account how fast it was, we get 760.62 gigatons of TNT, or high island level. Yeah, I figured adding the destructive value of the meteor wouldn't really change the DC all that much. Regardless, this gives Doffy's AP to be around high island level. Very nice considering this is without awakening. Next calc. Oh boy, this is the big one that a lot of people were waiting for. This will be actually 2 calcs in one, so it'll be a doozy. Drunk on power and with no real control of the Gura Gura, Teach sends a tsunami at Spada Archipelago. Chapter number 579. First, we need to determine the distance between Marineford and Spada. This graph shows the structure of the trifecta that is Marineford, Impel Down, and Enies Lobby. Important to note though that none of the islands are visible to one another. They are all beyond the horizon to each other. Once again in my video I determined the distance to the horizon is over 10 million meters in length, so I'll use that as how far apart these 3 islands are to each other, as a lowball at least. Getting the distances in pixels, I get an average of 56.33 pixels per horizon distance. This would mean the per pixel value is around 188.32 kilometers a pixel. While the Viz translation omits this, the fan translation says that the tsunami is coming towards the southern coast of the island. I made sure to check if the Japanese RAW mentions it too, and yes, it actually does. Nanbo Engen means southern coast. Now, let's think about the structure of the One Piece world. The Grand Line is a horizontal line wrapping around the planet, with the calm belt wrapped around that. On the graph, we see that the calm belt is to the right of Marineford. This means that the right of Marineford is either north or south. But we know 2 things. 1, Spada is an island on the Grand Line, and 2, the tsunami coming from Marineford is hitting Sabadi's south side. So, the right of Marineford must be south, which means that the tsunami is moving towards the left of Marineford. We don't know how far Spada Archipelago is relative to Marineford, but using the graph, it must be at least 30,507 kilometers away. Now that we have a distance, we can move on to the actual calculations. But before I do that, a huge thanks to Business Email for helping me with this calc. I could have never done it without his help. Another huge help was from the 2013 Whitebeard Quakes calc from God Movement. Without this prototype to work off of, it would have taken so much longer to finish this. The research for this was already strenuous, but without a framework to work off of, it would have been nightmarish. And now let's talk quakes. According to this site, the following formula is used to gain the Richter magnitude of an earthquake. A is the amplitude in millimeters, and delta, the triangle, T, is time difference in seconds. Now, I know this formula may look scary, especially for someone like me who hasn't done logarithmics since high school, but bear with me. Here are some of the basic stuff you gotta know. First, the terms epicenter and hypocenter. The epicenter being the center of an earthquake above ground, and the hypocenter being where the earthquake originates underground. This thing right here is what we call a seismometer. It allows us to record the amplitude of earthquakes by turning vibrations into electrical signals that draw a seismograph. The seismograph has 2 particular waves. the primary and secondary waves. They're also called P and S waves. P waves are faster, but S waves are what actually affect the surface. The time between the two waves' arrivals is our time difference, our delta T. This right here is what we call a nomogram. It's a graph used to measure characteristics of an earthquake given certain other characteristics. For example, a seismic station located 60 kilometers from the epicenter of an earthquake recorded the maximum height of the S waves to be 50 millimeters. What was the Richter magnitude of this earthquake? To solve this, we simply draw a line from 60 kilometers all the way to 50 millimeters, and that gives us a magnitude of 4.5. Simple, right? Well, Whitebeard is a weird case. As GM stated in his own calc, Whitebeard is both the epicenter and the hypocenter. Taking this into account, he said the following in the calc. I drew through 2.5 as that is the most we can deduce. However, with the nomogram going up a single unit in magnitude increases the amplitude by 10 times. Why? It's logarithmic. So, 2.5 equals 50 millimeters, 3.5 equals 500 millimeters, 4.5 equals 5,000 millimeters. Teach would be just as special as Whitebeard in this case, since he uses the gura the same way. So this applies to him just as well. At 2.5 on the Richter magnitude scale, GM determined the amplitude is at 50 millimeters. But how strong were Teach's earthquakes? How high would they be on the Richter scale? Well, as we can see in this scan, the tsunamis Teach created were easily hundreds of meters tall. We know this because we have Sanwan Wolf's height thanks to his Weaver card being 180 meters. Despite that height, he was still able to hide behind the Marineford base, and it wasn't until he moved around it that he was seen. The largest tsunamis we see are behind the Marineford building, and even then they seem to be around the height of the approximately 200 meter high building, but because they are farther from the point of view than Marineford, they would look a lot smaller than they actually are. As such, they are definitely higher than 200 meters. To take a real-life example, the 2001 Tohoku earthquake was a magnitude 9 to 9.1 earthquake, and the tsunamis it caused were up to 40.5 meters in height. Given that fact, I'll use 9.5 on the Richter scale for Teach's quakes as a safe lowball. As GM noted, the Richter scale is a logarithm. As such, these are our values for the Richter scale. And given we're using 9.5 on the Richter scale, this gives us an amplitude of 500 million millimeters. And now that we have the amplitude, we just need delta T to do the formula. As I said earlier, delta T is the time difference between S and P waves on the seismograph. Alas, we have no such thing, so what can we do? Does that mean the calc is a bust? Well, when there's a will, there's a way. In comes this lecture about seismology that gives a very helpful formula. You can find how far an earthquake moved in miles if you just have delta T. All you have to do is multiply it by 5.7. Using basic algebra, I can find delta T by the following formula. S minus P, or delta T, equals the distance the earthquake traveled in miles divided by 5.7. Doing just that gives us a time difference of 3,325.65 seconds. This is our delta T. Now we finally go back to our formula. In the end, we get a final result of 19.15 for our magnitude. Putting that in the earthquake power calculator and we get a result of 0.81 yotatons of TNT. Solidly high planet level pre-time skip Gura Blackbeard. Holy shit, we finally made One Piece planet level. It took so long, but it's done. Although this calc may be done, I am not. I still have one more calc in me. Although this is a hypothetical one, wait until you see the result. In chapter 553, Vice Admiral Tsuru says that wherever she goes it won't be safe after Vice Admiral Yamakiji tells her to take cover. In Japanese, she says, Umi no hate made sagate mo anzen na basho nante aria shinai yo, which basically means there's no safe haven, even at the very ends of the sea. This implies that Whitebeard has planet-wide range with his quakes. This notion is supported when a far-off island, one even farther away than Sabaudi, was feeling earthquakes. As such, I'll assume that Whitebeard is capable of sending an earthquake strong enough to destroy a well-built one-story building on the other side of the planet. This will be the same method as the teach calc, so first, the amplitude. According to this seismology site, 6.1 to 6.9 on the Richter scale is where buildings actually start breaking down. As such, I'll use 6.5 for the earthquake. This gives us an amplitude of 500,000 millimeters using the logarithmic order I mentioned earlier. Now, delta T. This is actually pretty simple. In my One Piece Planet video, I determined the planet had a circumference of nearly 13 million kilometers. Cutting that in half, I get around 6.46 million kilometers. This is the distance the hypothetical quake traveled. Using the same formula I used earlier, I get a delta T of over 705,000 seconds. And doing all the math again, as well as putting the magnitude in the calculator, the final result of the calc comes out to 0.53 tenatons of TNT. High large planet level. Funny enough, this still isn't enough energy to destroy the One Piece planet, so I guess here's hoping that we get such a feat by the end of the series. I will say this though about Mr. Teach and his earthquakes, whatever he can do, Whitebeard can do too, as well as so much more. Remember, Teach just acquired the Gura Gura, while Whitebeard had the Gura Gura for decades. There's no way that Whitebeard is incapable of creating earthquakes stronger than Teach, so whatever Teach can do, Whitebeard can do better. And with the quake calcs done, I really need to put a disclaimer here. I am no seismologist. I am far from that. Geology is probably my worst science, behind like machinery probably. So if I have made any mistake whatsoever in my calculation of these quakes, please in the comments below correct me, because I want these calcs to be absolutely flawless. And if I made any mistakes, I would love to fix them to be even more accurate. Alright, that's it. I'm done. I calced all the feats One Piece has that I deem worth calcing. And before one of you brings up Queen's lasers, Sanji, Zoro, and even Chopper dodging them, I'll wait until it's confirmed that they're light speed. I can already make an argument that they are, but it's a pretty damn shaky one, so I won't make it. Until it's confirmed that Queen's lasers are light speed, or I find another impressive feat, I'm pretty much done with this verse calcs-wise. I hope you had as much fun watching this as I did calcing these feats. Hope this was an entertaining and or educational time for you guys and gals. Ideally, I'd like for it to be both, but whatever. Insert reminder to like, comment, and subscribe here, yada 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 yada. Support me on Patreon to help me live, and join my Discord server where I can teach anyone that loves this stuff as much as I do. Whew. I think I mentioned everything. I'm too tired to even remember anymore. It's literally 7 a.m. as I'm recording this. Well, regardless, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys and gals next time. Love you all. Man, I need a % to reward myself for all this.